I declare the meeting open and welcome you to the September meeting of Council. The recording of this Council meeting will be available to the public on Council's website for a minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with Council policy, I will now ask Council staff to confirm that the recording has commenced.
Yes, it has, ma'am.
Thank you, Sandy. I'd first of all like to acknowledge that we meet today on the land of the Malacca people, the traditional custodians of this land. Our Aboriginal people have a deep spiritual connection to country and they've cared for our waterways and our land for over 40,000 years in Tasmania. We pay our respects to their customs, their elders past, present and emerging. And welcome everybody to tonight's ordinary meeting of Council for September. In attendance tonight, I have in the chambers with us our Acting General Manager, Matthew Grimsey. Matthew, would you first of all like to introduce the staff that are here this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. So present in the Council chambers tonight, Director Corporate Services, David Spinks, Director Environment and Development Services, Luke Chu, Director Infrastructure Services, Len Bester, Director Community Services, Beck Stevenson. We have on IT, Michael Glazer and Sandy Rustell, Executive Assistant.
Thank you very much. Attending in person this evening, we have Deputy Mayor Doyle, Councillor Newell, Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'May, Councillor Bird and Councillor Prince. And attending remotely this evening, we have Councillor Gibson and Councillor Campbell. Welcome to the councillors. We go on to item 2, which is non-attendance. There are no apologies this evening, there are no leave of absence and there is nobody absent. We move on to item 3, declarations of interest. And just ask the councillors, is there any item on tonight's agenda that you wish to declare an interest? And there's silence, so that is nil. We move on to item 4, confirmation of minutes. Is someone happy to move the minutes for the ordinary meeting held on the 26th of August 2020? We have Councillor Wilson is moving and seconding is Councillor Gibson. And I'll put the motion and I'll put the motion and ask councillors to raise their hand if they are in favour of that motion. So if councillors can raise their hands if they're in favour of that motion. Right, thank you. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We move on to item 5 and there are no legislative items this evening. I believe there are no urgent matters.
Correct, ma'am.
And is there any councillor that would like to make an announcement this evening? No, there doesn't appear to be. Thank you very much. We now move on to section 8 of the agenda, which is public participation, which is question time. So where questions can be answered, the question and answer will be recorded at tonight's meeting. Where questions cannot be answered, the question will be taken on notice and answered at the following meeting, which will be October. Question time is limited to 15 minutes and public questions were received up to 12 noon today and all questions and answers have been uploaded to Council's meeting page for public viewing prior to the Council meeting start time this evening. And 8.1.1, there are no answers to previous questions taken on notice. 8.1.2, there is one question on notice. And that is from a Chris Ford from Pelverata to the Mayor. At the August 2020 ordinary meeting, Councillor Wilson asked a question which was refused. The question related to complaints lodged against Huen FM radio presenter Andy Waterhouse. The question is, can you please advise who the author of the complaint was, followed by a second question, was the complaint lodged by the Huon Valley Council or was it lodged by the author as a personal complaint? My answer to Chris Ford is I'm refusing your questions. I refused a similar question from a councillor at the August Council meeting and it is inappropriate for the Council to make any comment on confidential complaints made to any third-party organisation, which is a matter for their due process and not that of Council. Thank you.
Raise your point of order there, Mayor.
You can't actually question time? No? Thank you. There's no discussion with question time. We now move on to the 8.1.3, and there are 3 questions without notice this evening. One from Jeffrey Swan, there's questions from Jeffrey Swan, from Debbie Armstrong and Liz Smith. So I'll use the 15 minutes of question time to work my way through those. So the question from Jeffrey Swan at Lonavale, the weather forecast for last week was rain, and it did rain to include Friday. Question 1, will our Mayor please explain what protection Council has against any future legal or work-safe issues that may arise from workers who were wearing no protective clothing, no gloves, no face mask and no goggles while spraying a carcinogenic herbicide onto the footpath outside Banjo's at 6 a.m. on Friday the 25th of September 2020. And in response to Mr Swan's question, Council meets its legal requirements by requiring workers to undertake various activities in accordance with the relevant regulations, safety data sheets and standard operating procedures. We now move on to a question from Debbie Armstrong in Cigna. The question is, when can we expect to have meetings with public attendance? I see no reason why meetings cannot be held in the Palais or the Town Hall. Both have space to allow for social distancing. And our response to Debbie Armstrong is, this has not yet been determined and will depend upon the state government's variation of COVID-19 prevention measures. You will note from this meeting that more councillors are attending the meeting in person. However, this is taking into account the space within the council chambers. The particular issue associated with public attendance is that the technology required for audio recording and live video streaming is fixed within the council chambers in Huonville and is not available within the halls, limiting the broader public access to council meetings. So we just don't have that technology in the other halls. Thank you for your question. We now move to Dr. Liz Smith of Cigna. Her first question is, submission 2 on the climate change strategy was comprehensive and included a suggestion that a new category heading, planning, including 1 action, be included under objective 2. The action was that council produce a policy on the use of water-sensitive urban design in all new developments by 2022 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So why was this important contribution not mentioned in the report and included as an additional action? And the answer to that is, as outlined in the strategy, the focus of the mitigation actions in the first strategy is on the areas that the data point to be key contributors to greenhouse gas emissions in the municipal area, i.e. the Huon Valley Council Greenhouse Gas Inventory and the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority Community Emissions Reports. This data has not pointed to stormwater being a major contributing factor to greenhouse gas emissions. Officers do, however, acknowledge the environmental benefits of water-sensitive urban design and are broadly supportive of water-sensitive urban design principles. It is also acknowledged that water-sensitive urban design may have implications to climate change adaptation, coping with increased extreme weather events, so may potentially feature in the future adaptation plan. It is also noted that not being an action with the mitigation plan does not preclude Council from developing a policy on water-sensitive urban design if it wishes to for other reasons beyond mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. For example, environmental benefits. I'll now return to Mr. Swan and another question. Who is accountable for this? This is in relation to the previous question regarding spraying of carcinogenic herbicide. Who is accountable for this almost unbelievable oversight, and what follow-up action will council management now take over this matter? And the response to Mr. Swan is the application of the chemical has been undertaken in accordance with legal requirements and no further action is required. Thank you. We now move back to Dr. Liz Smith and her next question. Have the councillors considered water-sensitive urban design as a research-based and practical approach to the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions? That should be included in the strategy in order to reduce risk to the community and the costs of residential development. And the answer is, as noted above, in the previous answer, water-sensitive urban design does not feature in the mitigation plan as the data has not pointed to stormwater being a major contributing factor to greenhouse gas emissions in the municipal area. However, as also noted above, water-sensitive urban design may potentially feature in the future adaptation plan, which would align to the above suggestion, i.e. to reduce risk to the community and the costs of residential development. Are adaptation matters, not greenhouse gas mitigation matters. Can I ask how we're going for time, Sandy?
You've still got 4 minutes.
Okay, all right. I will need to proceed to some other questions then that are here as well, because we do have that time allocated. Another question from Mr. Swan. Why is it deemed necessary for council to spray the footpath outside of Banjos? And the answer is Huon Valley Council maintain 2 garden beds in close proximity to the Banjos store. A further question, why were our council workers not wearing protective clothing? And the next answer is there is no requirement to do so and council workers were appropriately attired. And question 5, being the last question, is this a matter that now needs the attention of WorkSafe Tasmania? And the response is no work was undertaken in accordance with requirements and this is not a reportable incident under the Act. Thank you very much everyone for your questions. And that concludes question time. We now move on to 8.2. There are no deputation addresses to council. Number 9, there are no petitions. Thank you. We now move on to item 10, which is general reports. And the first report on the list is the General Manager's operational report. Acting General Manager, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I will just simply refer to the General Manager's operational report, which is included in the attachments.
All right, lovely, thank you. I just will make a couple of comments, if I may, on the Mayor's activity report. So within that report, I attended with the General Manager 7 meetings with state and federal government politicians, elevating the urgency of the key priority growth projects of the Huon Valley Council, which included 2 half-day tours of the Valley visiting project sites. I also attended 5 meetings relating to the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority and the Regional Climate Change Initiative agenda. And one of those meetings was with the Minister of Climate Change, the Premier Peter Gutwin. We were successful in receiving a $50,000 contribution from the Premier for the UTAS ARC linkage grant, and that will help prepare a Southern Regional Council's climate resilience strategy that covers carbon dioxide emissions reduction and how we respond to climate change, including a regional action plan for implementation and an action plan template. We would support councils in populating these this suite of templates to their local environment. And the ARC project budget is totaled at $1,038,736,000, and many partners have put contributions into that grant, including Launceston City Council, who have come on board with the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority, which is a direction we would like to head as in a all approach in Tasmania. And I just wanted to share with the public and my fellow councillors that the Premier also shared with us the following, that he believes in the climate science, that his government is reviewing the target for 0 emissions by 2050 by working with industry, with a desire to bring forward the target. The budget for putting up a budget for EV and hybrid fleet, so to create a second-hand market in Tasmania. improve the safety of our people and make towns more defendable through new legislation to reduce the threat of bushfires through the draft Bushfire Mitigation Measures Bill, which is now out for consultation. Our government is modelling how to respond to a bushfire during COVID-19 restrictions, and he's concerned about the sea level rise in Tasmania and will be reviewing the state coastal policy. And the Premier was interested in the work that the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority has been doing in the last 12 months in their coastal strategy in relation to that as well. So the door is open for continued conversation, which is very good. That's a wrap up from me. The Renault Recreation Area Management Advisory Committee minutes. I'm the chair of that committee. Look, the main point focus of that meeting was the construction of the pavilion and public toilet building in the Renault Recreation Grounds, with a combined project value of $790,000, and the council is a co-contributor to that. The Huonville Recreation Area Management Advisory Committee minutes for the 10th of August. I'm the chair of that one as well. The main focus of discussion covered was the completion of various recreational projects in Huonville, including securing funding for CCTV cameras, which is wonderful. The next item there is Youth Committee minutes, 17th of August 2020. And as a councillor is not a chair of that meeting, I will hand over to the Director of Community Services. If you'd like to make a comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The Youth Committee are working through the current Youth Week project. So Youth Week is being held between the 5th of October through to Saturday the 12th of October. They've identified a project that they've been working on for quite some time now, which is a week-long, there's two prongs to it, a week-long social media campaign, as well as the development of posters and postcards which promote positive steps youth can take in talking to their peers about mental health and support avenues. So we'll start to see those publicised over the next week or so, with Youth Week starting next week. And the second part of the meeting, they're holding regular discussion topics now of areas of interest to them. The August meeting topic was in relation to youth mental health as well, so we carried that theme through. And there's some really good discussion and ideas and suggestions in the minutes for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ben. The audit panel minutes for the 18th of August. I'll ask Councillors Doyle or Campbell if they would like to provide any overview.
Yes, through you, Mayor.
Yes,
we had our first meeting with our new audit panel chair, and it was a good meeting. It was probably long because one of the new panel members, Cam, made sure he understood every thing that was dotted and crossed. But I can see that we're going to have a good committee with those on board.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, did you want to add to that, or you?
Look, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mayor. I think Sally summed it up, and yes, it was a very good meeting, and I think we're going to, feel pleased with the two new panel members. I'm looking forward to working all together. Thank you.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much to both of you. We now move on to the Health and Wellbeing Committee meeting minutes, 27th of August, and I'll ask the Chair, Councillor Lovell, if she would like to provide an update.
Thank you, Mayor. So for this meeting, we had Paul give us an overview on the draft survey from the North West Coast COVID outbreak. So that was really interesting to hear what had been going on after that. We've got an update on the youth working group. So quite a few of our members are part of working groups that branch off from the Health and Wellbeing Committee. So the youth working group, Julie provided the update on behalf of Mitch, who was away, and just updated us on the activities at the Dover District School, the Argos program. So they've had good attendance with that. I wanted to mention in there that so it'll commence at Huonville on Friday the 16th of October as well, and then there'll be a roving program starting Wednesday 14th of October. So those details will be on the council's website. So we also had an update from the Child and Family Working Group, the Positive Ageing Working Group as well. That's all available in the minutes to view there. We also, so we had a bit of a discussion about the concept of the Huon Valley Hub. So the committee was very excited to hear about what might be going over there and going on with that. So we're going to be taking a bit of a tour through there. We'll all go over and have a look at it. And yeah, so there's a couple of actions coming out of that meeting for us as well as council. So yeah.
Good. Right, thank you. And the Arts and Culture Committee meeting minutes, that's the 28th of July, and they were reported on the last month that it was there. Do any councillors wish to table or speak to their activities this evening?
Yes, Mayor, I've got mine on the table.
All right, yes, thank you.
Want me to speak now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
The Port Esperance Sailing Club. I went down with a meeting with those guys and Bendigo Bank, and I was really pleased to see this week that Duggins have Proprietary Limited have delivered them a container that council has allowed them to put down on the foreshore area there, and that's been delivered to them this week. So well done to Duggins for doing that, and it's nice to see a committee that's really positive about the future. And I attended the Citizenship Award at Glen Huon, and that was delightful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other activities to be tabled this evening?
I've got mine.
Yes, thank you. Did you want to speak to them?
Probably just to say I ended up being able to get to the Dover Hall AGM and the Forest Workers Memorial AGM as well, which was really good.
Yeah. Thank you. And just for those viewing, activity reports are located on Council's website, should you wish to view them. Do we have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period 1 to 31 August received and noted? Councillor O'May put his hand up to move, and then Councillor Newell for seconding. Thank you. And just before we go to moving the motion, is there any questions from any of the councillors regarding any of those reports? Quite wonderful. I say I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And yes, we have everybody here, so that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 11, which is council workshops. I'll just ask the Acting General Manager if you'd like to give an overview.
Thank you, Mayor. So as written in the agenda, 1st of September, there was a brief provided on the status of the Jeffreys Track feasibility study project, and that was ahead of public meetings held as part of engagement, and there's certainly some community interest in relation to that feasibility study. Manager Environmental Services provided a presentation on the climate change strategy engagement and status to date, and that is on tonight's agenda. On the 22nd of September, Director of Community Services and Communications and Media Team Leader led a discussion on the draft annual report. The intent is that the draft annual report would go to the October meeting. I would just foreshadow for councillors and the public's information that because of delays, particularly in relation to auditing of financial statements that have arisen out of COVID, it is likely that an order will be made to extend the time that the annual general meeting will be held. So it's likely that we'd be putting a report up once that notice comes through to potentially put that off until about February, which will allow time for the complete financial statements and report to be done.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
There was a discussion on policy reviews at that same workshop, privacy policy, access to information policy and letters of support policy. They are all on tonight's council agenda. There's also an update on the implementation as opposed to interpretation, as it says in the agenda, Mayor, on RV sites and the Treasury and Economic Regulators requirements.
Thank you.
And another report and reports in tonight's meeting.
Thanks, Matthew. Right, so we move on to item 12, councillor questions. There are no questions on notice. 12.2, are there any questions without notice?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sorry, councillor Bird had her hand up first. Councillor Bird?
So in light of the recent fatal car accident at the Southbridge Waste Transfer Station, can the Acting General Manager or the Director of Infrastructure Services advise councillors if there has been any communication with DSG regarding the waste transfer station access and what is the outcome of the discussions?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take that one. Thank you, Councillor Lovell. The General Manager has spoken with the General Manager of State Growth. It has been agreed to do a slight adjustment of the line markings, which will bring them closer to the road and encourage and improve greater sight distance. Signage at the junction is also being reviewed, and council officers are working with State Growth to identify opportunities for black spot funding for improvements to the junction. And Director of Infrastructure Services also has an addition to that.
Mayor, if I may, my council officers made a submission to the black spot funding grant just this week for improvements to that intersection, to relocate that intersection. Only in concept stage at the moment, but we've made that submission.
Thank you very much. That was Len Bester from Infrastructure. Sorry, yes, thank you very much. Now we go to Councillor Wilson and then Councillor O'May.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to the Director of Corporate Services. David, could a report be prepared for the November meeting or later, re the finances of our visitor centres that we've had in the past, for the past 12 months, basically turnover, expenses, wages, including redundancies for that period, 1st of July 2019 to the 30th of June 2020, please?
Through you, Mayor, I'm sure we can accommodate that request. No dramas.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. You have a question without notice, Councillor O'May?
Was just sorry, I didn't quite hear what Director Bester said. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say relocate the entrance? Was that correct?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor O'May, that is correct. My council officers have developed a concept plan to relocate the entrance to Southbridge Waste Transfer Station some 80 to 100 metres further south. That concept would also allow the public to queue off the highway because we have been notified that there has been occasions where the public are actually queuing on the highway waiting for the transfer station to open. So I believe this concept has some merit.
So are you suggesting along the lines of a slip road type relocation where there's it's a DER road, if I'm not wrong, isn't it? So, or is it the council responsible for the entrance, or is it DER responsible for the entrance? Or
Council is responsible for the entrance. It is a state road, so we have to work in conjunction with Department of State Growth on that matter. The concept that we've put forward for the black spot funding grant does allow an alternative location for the entry onto the highway, entry and exit onto the highway, which is on a straight section of that highway rather than the curvature.
oh, I think that's a great idea. So you're suggesting coming in where the recycling steel component of this.
That's correct, with a accessory road down to the main entrance.
And what about the exit? Is there anything we can do? That's a great idea for the entry. Is there any other improvement we can do for the exit?
the relocation of the intersection will give greater line of sight than what is there at the moment.
Can I suggest that the director comes back to the council when there's more detail available, and then we can have a further discussion about it. That's okay?
Yeah, no, I just think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a question too, Mayor, sorry.
Yes?
Now, I'm asking this question because I wanted to ask it earlier on and I wasn't allowed. I've been approached by 3 members of the public. I want to know, Mayor, we're a transparent, open and honest council, why the question won't be answered about the complaint that was made to Huon FM. I don't consider it to be a confidential matter, as the letter was sent to all us and it was sent, it's in the public arena.
Right, I'll just repeat what I said earlier on. So the chair does have a right to refuse, and it's not an activity. It's not about an activity of the council, and that is the reason why it's based. We can't debate this.
So I'm not allowed to have a say. If a complaint was made by the council, Mayor, it is.
Councillor Newell, this is not. You do not debate these things, these matters. You can ask a question. The chair has a right to refuse the question. The chair gives a reason for refusing that question, and then the conversation ends at that point. Otherwise, you then become in breach of actually challenging the chair.
Okay.
So I'm saying to you that the activity, the reason why it's refused is that the activity does not relate to council matters. So, yeah, end on. All right. So, are there any further questions? No, thank you very much. So if we go to item 13, there are no notices of motion. Thank you. So we go on to our first report for the evening, operation of RV sites on council-owned or controlled land update, agenda number 14.005/20. And do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, thank you, Councillor O'May. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Lovell. And Councillor O'May, do you have any opening remarks at all?
No, Mayor, other than the fact that I suggest that we do as much as we possibly can to improve or help in any way forward any of these sites and any issues regarding them, as we've been through COVID and it's pretty difficult times. A lot of people will be holidaying at home. So as much we can do as a council to improve and facilitate these travellers, we should be doing. And that's about all I've got to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll now open up the floor. Sorry?
Just a question
Oh,
in regard to sites.
Yeah. I was just about to open the floor.
Oh, sorry.
That's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. So yes, now I'll open the discussion to the floor. Councillor Wilson, you indicated you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the General Manager, Acting General Manager. A permit, I take it, has been issued for the company at the moment?
A permit has been issued for the Deepston site.
Yes.
A development application has just completed advertising for Franklin. And Shipwright's Point, which will be discussed later on, there needs to be consideration of alternatives that's possible.
Is it appropriate at the moment to ask whether, when they're looking at opening the Deepston site, I suppose that's where I'm coming from here, they've got a permit, and there's obviously stuff that we'll be discussing later.
I think that goes with discussions on the next agenda item.
Thanks very much, General Manager.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from councillors regarding that report? Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge the correspondence that we've received from Alex Leroy's and Ken Stronach and their call for action to open the council-owned land RV parks in the Huen Valley, just acknowledging their concerns and those that they represent. And that's probably all from me, to be honest, at the moment. Thank you. Nothing from councillor Gibson or Campbell? No? All right, okay. All right, so I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, just a closing comment. Councillor May, did you wish to make a closing comment at all?
Oh, no, just to reiterate my earlier comments. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Yes, so I have online on hand as well, which is great. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move to the next report, which is request for grant or benefit, agenda number 14.005/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Lovell. A seconder, please. That's Councillor Doyle. Councillor Lovell, do you have any opening comments?
I just wanted to say that I want this to move ahead as quick as possible. I think it's been delayed long enough. And if this can get it going for Jeepston, I'm in support.
Thank you. All right, I'll now open up to the floor for comments or questions, please. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Just a comment basically for the councillors that council has roads now into two of its sites, which we maintain. What we're talking about with this one obviously is that putting a road into that site, that the company would effectively maintain that road, which has got to be a benefit to our council. So that's a comment that I'd like to make on that. Is it appropriate for me to ask on timing at this point or not?
Yes.
Through your Mayor to the gentleman.
Thank you. I can respond to that, Councillor Wilson. So the key in relation to this recommendation, or motion that's before the council at the moment is that it is on condition that it's open and operational at the start of the 2021 summer season. So the beginning of December is effectively where we're aiming for. So that becomes a precondition that the CMCA will have to consider as to whether or not they wish to proceed.
Again, can I have another comment? Again, to you, Acting GM. The timing is fine, but effectively, what happens if they don't come back to us, say, within 30 days? Can we bring that timing forward a bit and say, look, we've got to get a notice from them within 14 days? Is that appropriate for us to do that? Is it feasible for us to do that? Because what I'm seeing or worrying about more than anything, if they're not going to come back to us, say, for 30 days, and we've got to go and try and get somebody else if they don't want to do it, you know, we're going to be well and truly into the season.
Yeah, certainly we can put a time frame on that when we send out the correspondence to them to come back to us.
Yes.
Certainly we have some discussion in relation to commercial arrangements in close council. It would be better to be discussed in that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor May.
I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Wilson's comments, and as hasty as we can do something in this regard, the better. It's my view.
Thank you. Yes, all right, lovely. Okay, so any closing comments at all, Councillor Lovell?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Yes? Yeah.
It says one other.
Oh, I think it's got both names. There we go. Yes, there's two. So that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We move to the next report, review of access to information policy, GovCorp 011, agenda number 15.012/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Newell. And Councillor Gibson, seconder. Thank you. Thank you for that assistance. Thanks for looking at the screen. Councillor Newell, do you have any opening comments?
No, I don't, happy with it.
Thank you. All right, so I'll open to the floor. Any comments or questions from councillor, please, regarding this policy? Sorry?
Councillor Gibson.
Councillor Gibson, you have a question or a comment?
Oh, I'd just like to thank Matthew for the alterations that we made after the workshop. Just thought that should be on the public record, that it's all been tidied up and it's in very good shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any further comments or questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay, all right. Any closing comments, Councillor Newell?
No.
All right, thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors present. Yes. And the motion is carried. Thank you. We now go to the next report, review of privacy policy, GovCorp 010, agenda number 15.013/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Seconder, Councillor O'May. Good to see so many hands up. Councillor Doyle, do you have any opening comments regarding this?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I'll now open up for discussion on the floor. Any comments or questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I have the same comment, actually, that likewise, following workshopping this during the week, there's been a few changes made, minor changes, which make it read very well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so any closing comments at all, Councillor Doyle?
No.
No, all right. So all those I'll put the motion. Those councillors in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Got to get back in the habit of that one.
Councillor Campbell and Councillor Gibson.
And they're all on. Okay, beautiful. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the next policy, review of request for letters of support policy, GovCorp 013, agenda number 15.014/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson. And a seconder, please. Councillor O'May. Councillor Gibson, do you have any opening comments?
I think this is very straightforward. No, I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Over to the floor, any comments or questions from the councillors? No? All right, lovely. Councillor Gibson, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Yep, beautiful, thank you. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. We now move on to the financial report, agenda number 16.012/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? That's Councillor Wilson. A seconder, please. Councillor O'May. Councillor Wilson, do you have any opening remarks?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, it's to the Director. Under the code of, the financial reports is $1,548 in the code of conduct stuff. Can you explain what that is for, Director? Just an item on this year's.
I actually have to defer to the academic candidate, Ms. Earls, Mayor.
I'd like to take that one.
All right.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but there are cases where complaints are made but are dismissed and do not go further to a hearing.
Yes.
So that's where those costs have been incurred.
Okay, that's what that $1,548 for.
Yes.
Can I also ask another question on this? There's around about $7,000 at this stage, now about $8,000 billed to council for 3 of the code of conducts, I understand it. Plus this one, so that'll be a 4. Have we received accounts in for the other 2? A total of 6.
We have not received the accounts in for the other 2.
Have we got any indication when they normally would come in?
No,
it's pretty slow.
The state government's invoicing in relation to COVID is very, very varied.
Okay, good. Thanks very much for that. Thanks, Director.
Just a question back to Councillor Wilson, did you want like a notification from
I think it's
the governance area when that has occurred? Would that be helpful to you?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I think it's important that we basically know exactly. I mean, there was something like 6 code of conduct complaints, but it's interesting that we know exactly what it has cost our ratepayers, so that we try not to make it happen into the future. And if we could be notified as
Yeah.
councillors, that would be great.
So the Director of Governance, Acting General Manager,
Yep.
has said he will provide notification of when those costs come in.
Thanks very much for that.
Now open to the floor for any questions or comments. Yes, Councillor Prince.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not entirely sure if this question is quite the right appropriate form for it, so feel free to shoot this one down if it's not right. But the playground at Glen Huon and the fence there, have we got a rough, I know it's not started yet, but do we have a rough timeline of when that might start? Through you, Mayor?
Yes, Director of Community Services, Beck.
Yes, through you, Mayor, Councillor Prince, we're currently scoping that project and engaging with the whole management committee out there. They've got some ideas as well, so we want to make sure that we're capturing that before we go out for broader community engagement as to the ideas and suggestions for the site. So I expect engagement to start before Christmas. Work wouldn't start before Christmas, it'll be after Christmas.
Excellent. Through you, Mayor, thank you very much.
Any further comments or questions? Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
She's got a mic off.
Still on mute, Councillor Campbell.
Can't hear you.
You'll need to take your microphone off, Councillor Campbell.
That's all.
Oh, lovely. Okay, let's try.
Sorry, through you, Mayor, to the Director of Finance. If I could ask David, just in number 12 under investments, I note that the falling cash rate has seen the council investment performing below budget expectations. And I'm just wondering, as we are expecting another reduction in the interest rate with the RBA, what triggers for council looking at alternative investments where we actually are not just losing money that we have invested, or that we can make better use of our money on investments? Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, David.
Through you, Mayor. Look, it is a fact that interest rates have fallen since the budget was set, and the month that we're in at the moment, so next September results, which we bring back to the next council meeting, will be our first updated projection for the year. But at this stage, we're probably looking at, it's a $200,000 budget item at the moment, so we're probably looking to probably halve that. All our investments that we do are obviously in compliance with the current investment policy, so we don't sort of do anything obviously outside of that. It just so happens that the investments policy is due for review, and we've done that. And our plan is, in actual fact, to bring that to next council meeting, so that's probably an opportune time for people to think about that.
Yeah.
But obviously, goes without saying that we can't do anything that's, seems to be terribly risky. It's just an unfortunate sign of the times that interest rates have fallen, and we do have a very conservative investments policy, which is very common across the local government sector nationally, because we're dealing with public money. So, but look, I think the best thing we can do is provide a projection next month, bring back the policy review, and we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. All right. Yes, Councillor O'May, you have a question?
I'd just like to congratulate the Director of Finance for doing a great job and keeping the books as balanced as possible under duress we've been going through for the year in our finance situation.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you. And a nod there from David. A modest nod. Yes, Councillor Doyle.
Through you, Mayor, to the Director of Finance. How has it been with people and their rates? Has there been a lot of hardship, people requesting hardship? That David?
Yeah. Through you, Mayor. Look, we've been pleasantly surprised at how few requests we've had. So when we introduced the hardship policy, certainly I felt that the potential was there to receiving many, as in sort of hundreds possibly.
Yeah.
So far we've received 54 requests.
Wow.
only, and most of those are continuing to meet their payments. What those requests have generally been about is the waiver of the penalty and interest on any payments that they might miss, or reduced level of payments.
Yes.
So all in all, I'm actually very, very pleased with the way rates of payments have been holding up.
Yeah.
Very, very pleased.
Good.
That's really good to hear, and it's good to hear that people do take them seriously on paying their what they owe. So yeah, I think we should congratulate people of the Huon Valley on on doing that. It's a good job.
All right. Any final comments or questions? Right. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And Councillor Wilson, do you have any closing comments at all?
No, thank you very much. But again, I just would take Councillor May. Great job you're doing there, Director. In hard times.
Thank you. And well said. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And yes, that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the next report, Financial Reserve, as at 30 June 2020, agenda number 16.013/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor Wilson. And a seconder, Councillor O'May. Councillor Wilson, opening remarks.
I think we've really covered this in Christine's questions a moment ago, Councillor Campbell, so I think it's pretty well covered.
Okay, thank you. Open to the floor. Any comments or questions regarding this particular report? Okay, all right. So I'll put them, any closing comments, Councillor Wilson?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to proposal to formalise road names. Agenda number 16.014/20. And do I have a councillor to move a motion? That's Councillor Prince. And Councillor O'May was seconder, I believe. Thank you for your assistance, Matthew. So, Councillor Prince, do you have any opening remarks?
I just thought it's a nice little nod to history there, and it's quite a good name. I like that.
Thank you. Now open to the floor for any comments or questions, please. Yes, Councillor O'May.
Well, I agree with previous comments. I think it's very fitting.
Thank you. All right. So, back over to Councillor Prince for any closing comments. So, thank you. All right. So, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. So I now advise that the council is acting as a planning authority as at 52. Thank you. We're dealing first of all with, this is part 2, Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015. The council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the council will act as a planning authority with respect to those matters appearing under item 17 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. So, planning application DA 116/2020 is for multiple dwelling units times 15 and outbuilding freestanding carport at Station Road, Dover, CT 37201/1, agenda number 17.018/20. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor Newell. A seconder, please. Wow, that was a bit hard for me to get that one, sorry. Councillor Prince, okay. I think you almost did it all at the same time. Councillor Newell, do you have any opening remarks?
Yeah, look, I've been quite, I suppose, close to the Dover community for a long time, and I think this is a great development that is really, really long overdue down there, and it'll really make a lot of difference to a lot of people that are living in sheds And, you know, I think it's great.
Thank you. Yes, so open to the floor now for discussion. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I think that the major thing that I found with this, that people were a little bit confused between social housing and affordable housing. So I think once that was sort of explained to them, they were a lot better about making that decision. So, and there's quite a few recommendations there. So, like everyone else, they have to abide by the rules. So, no, I think this is a great project.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson next. Thank you.
Yes. The only thing that was sort of slightly disappointing to me was some of the energy efficiency issues, but they don't really, because we're acting as a planning authority, it doesn't really, we don't have a lot of space to change those. And I'm pleased to hear that we're meeting with Ben Wilson from Centrica, so we can take into account, you know, north-facing windows, energy efficiency, and you know, for economy, livability, and obviously for climate change mitigation.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I believe Councillor Wilson has a comment or a question.
I just a comment through you, Mayor. I think the quality of the reports that we're seeing coming to us is nothing short of phenomenal. It really is. I mean, everything's been, these reports are very, very, very thorough, and staff should be congratulated for them because they are extremely good and very professionally done. That's all the comments I'm going to make.
Thank you. Thank you. Further comments or questions?
Yeah, Mayor, through you. Look, I've spoken to a few people in Dover that as Councillor Newell alluded to, they do live rough, and they're quite proud and try to keep it fairly quiet, but this kind of thing certainly is warranted down in Dover, and I think it'll be a massive boost and help to the community. So, yeah, excellent work.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor May.
I also believe it's an excellent proposal and well deserved to the people of Dover. The only negative for me is on my childhood we bought a horse out of this paddock, Monty, and as Monty's now passed on, I have a little bit of a tear in my eye that this paddock's gone, that Monty came from, but yeah, a very good proposal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know where to go.
No. Through you, Mayor, did the director take that into consideration?
Oh dear. Are there any, before I make any comments, are there any other comments or questions from the floor?
I might just.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to thank the people that are putting the development for engaging with the community. There were a lot of misconceptions out there about what it was, and you know, we had a few people coming to us almost with their pitchforks until we sort of said, hang on a minute, how about you actually ask the questions? And they were more than happy to provide the answers. So I really want to thank them for meeting with the community and just clearing up those issues.
Yeah. So I've just got some comments to make, some that are planning authority related, some are just consideration but not planning authority related. I have found that also the planning reports have been really very easy to follow and really, which is important when you're not a qualified planner. So thank you for that. So upon reviewing the assessment, it appears that the development has triggered most of the acceptable solutions. I thought that was definitely worth noting. Acknowledging that the dwelling size for acceptable solution is no less than 325 square metres, and this development has a size of 278 square metres, but it clearly meets the performance criteria for significant community housing and its location to public transport and its accessibility to the shopping district is really important, and obviously had a big weight on this particular development. And also recognising that Unit 8 was sort of secured out for its own individual assessment against the performance criteria. So reading through the representations, I was really comfortable that any actual planning matter that was raised has been adequately responded to by our planning staff. And although not a matter we are considering tonight as a planning authority, I do see this as an opportunity, as such as some of my other colleagues have mentioned here tonight, the opportunity to address confusion that exists about what is affordable housing. And the applicant Centre Care involved actually have on their website, and clearly talks about it, that they have two programs. They have affordable housing program and they have a social housing program. Now, the affordable housing program is what fits this particular development. That's what this development is about. And affordable housing offers a secure alternative for low to moderate income earners who cannot afford the private market. So it's not the homeless people. The homeless people fit into a social housing market, not the affordable. So it's people that are of low to moderate income who cannot afford the private rental market. And the eligibility is based on a household income assessment. And very nicely, all these units will be filled with Huon Valley people, and that's been guaranteed by the developer. So we go to Councillor Newell for a closing comment.
No comment there.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. So we now have planning application DA 122/2020, dwelling at 175 Kent Beach Road, Dover, agenda number 17.019/20. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Wilson. Second, please, Councillor O'May. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any opening comments?
Well, it looks like David's going to start to get on the move a little bit down there, Mayor. So that's a comment that I'd make. Again, I see this as another good small development for the area. I really do. And it will encourage more people to do this sort of thing. Good report again.
Thank you. Now open to the floor for any comments or questions, please. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
Yes, my only comment really is about wanting to, well, I have two comments actually. Wanting to push back, our council push back as much as possible against work starting prior to approval. Because I think it really makes it difficult for the neighbours when it's already a fait accompli, when it's already done. And one of the examples in this case is the road running so close to the boundary all the way up there, the eastern boundary, I believe. And when it's already built, you don't have you don't have the comments of the neighbours to take into account. I did have a question back to the to Luke about water runoff off that, because the slope runs from that block across to the neighbour, and I was just wondering about controlling the runoff from the road and making sure that that doesn't become an issue with the neighbour.
Oh, yes. Yes, Director will respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There are requirements for the stormwater runoff from the driveway. The driveway is required to be sealed up to the property boundary, and then it's compacted FCR with a cement stabiliser within the property itself. And and there's a requirement there for the runoff to be discharged via a spoon drain beside the driveway down to the existing council culvert. And that's
Thank you very
my
much.
application.
All right, thank you. So, sorry, councillor Doyle, then councillor O'May.
Through you, Mayor, I would just like to make a statement about this, like councillor Gibson, about the starting without permit. Some people still don't realise that they're doing anything wrong, and that's the problem. I think I'm sure they probably would have thought you could put a road in, and you probably could have done a while ago, Luke, you know, like in old rules, you probably could build a road. So there is that confusion between what you can and what you can't. So, yeah, I don't think the person intended to do anything wrong.
Yes, councillor, sorry, Director, would you like to respond, please?
Yeah, so it's just a reminder, I might just clarify just with regards to the previous concern around it being a fait accompli. So that's not how it works. We certainly do encourage people, if they do works that require a permit without a permit, as per our enforcement policy, one of the first things we try to do is get them to get a permit for it if they can. That's one of the best ways to correct it. But it doesn't mean that it's a fait accompli. So our planners will assess those works as if they aren't there. So there's every chance that you could then have requirements or to move, to modify, to rectify, to rehabilitate, provide reports to justify it, which can be more expensive and harder to do once it's already there, depending on what the development is. So, you know, not necessarily this specific case, but in a general sense, it's certainly not a fait accompli. It's assessed as if it's not there.
Thank you for that explanation. It's important. Yes, councillor O'May.
I take on board councillor Gibson's comments and agree to some extent, but when looking at this plan, it's clearly evident to me, and it's common sense, that the only place that the road or being a track could go, there's nowhere else, there's no other access. So and what do you define as a road or a track? I mean, if somebody buys a block of ground and it's clearly evident that they have to access that block of ground, then the track's gone in the only place that it could have gone. So to me, I take on, as I say, I take on board councillor Gibson's comments, but it's pretty plain to me on this plan that's exactly what common sense said should have done has happened. And I think it's a great proposal within the town perimeter of Dover. It's creating employment, and it's, yeah, good to see something happening down there.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, councillor Lovell.
Just through you, Mayor, to the Director. Thank you for explaining that, because I think it's really important that people know that when you guys are doing your job and somebody has already put something there, you're not going, hey, yeah, that's okay, and we'll work around that. You actually have to go from like a clean slate to work it out, because I don't think people are realising that's how it works.
That's right. Has to meet the scale.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson, it needs to be a question, just to remind you. Thank you. Would you like me to come back? No, okay.
I don't think I can make it a question.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry. All right, any other comments, or if you haven't already made a comment, that is, or a question? No, okay. I've got a question, first of all, for the Director. Am I correct that the width of the block is about 110 metres wide, and in the assessment it actually mentioned about being a 100-metre setback because one of the boundaries is a rural resource boundary, but of course it's impossible to meet that requirement. I think that's the acceptable solution. Yeah. Performance criteria. And it's just interesting how often this comes up, isn't it? Because of the size of that block. And just in relation to triggering the performance criteria for height of fill and depth of excavation of more than 1 metre, and I believe the excavation is deeper than 2 metres on this site, which is 100% greater than the acceptable solution. Granting that a land stability report has been, a statement has been prepared by Hutchins Burr, would the planner normally address item A and B as well in their assessment?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and so would they normally document what that outcome is?
Yeah, I can see that there's not much commentary put in on that one under the assessment. I guess the key issue with that performance criteria for this particular proposal was the land stability, which is why they focused on that in the engineering report. But the part A and B, which is to do with the cut or the fill in the excavation, not distracting from the landscape character or impinging on privacy of the neighbour.
Yeah.
It was quite self-evident in the plans that that wasn't the case. It's a very large block. It's 2.7 hectares, set right at the back of the property, and the house is sited in front of the cut. So it wasn't going to create those visual or privacy overlooking issues.
Yeah, okay. I just thought if I had that question, maybe someone else reading it, the public might have that question, that's all. And one of my other questions has already been asked, so that's wonderful. But I'd just like to briefly respond to a couple of concerns made through the representations for this application. So yeah, you've already responded, which is great, Luke, about Councillor Lovell's question regarding assessment process when work's already been done or commenced without a permit, so that's great. But also on Council's website, I just wanted to bring to the attention that under planning, Council does list land clearing, excavation and or placement of fill as a may need to require a permit from Council. And that's why, as Councillor Doyle was saying, it's really important that people are contacting Council to find out, first of all, whether they need a permit or not. And also there was comments about, which is not a planning authority matter to consider, but about communication between neighbours. And once again, Council has that on their website where they actually, planning officers do encourage neighbours to talk about what they're planning, their proposal, purely for the reason to address any possible increase in costs that they might incur or delays. So really good advice that we hope people take. All right, so we now go back to Councillor Wilson, if you have a closing comment.
The only comment I'd make on this in regard to cleaning the land up and cleaning, I mean, if the landowner doesn't keep that block clear and clean at all times, he's up in trouble, or she is in trouble. You know, if you look at it's really a heavy wooded area one side, so if a fire starts there, I think he's done the right thing by just keeping that area cleaned up and some sort of an access into it in case he needed to get some sort of firefighting gear in there. So I applaud him for doing that, to be quite honest, because it keeps that block clear and not in danger of other houses in the area.
Thank you. All right, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. We now move to the next application to initiate a draft amendment to the Huon Valley Interim Planning Scheme 2015 to rezone land at One Channel Highway, Cigna, and an application for a planning permit for subdivision of the property, agenda number 17.020/20. Do I have a councillor? Yes.
Mayor, before councillors move this, there is an amended recommendation that has been circulated to councillors. And I might just get the director to give a very quick brief as to what those changes are.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, Luke.
Yeah, so there's a couple of minor sort of typographical, well, not really errors, but I guess when we're referencing the property and the subdivision, just to make sure that's perfectly clear. The amendment, the recommendation G, we've got subject to set out in attachment C2 to this report with a new line, which is subject to amendment to the last sentence in condition 3 to replace DSG Council with Crown. That was just a typo that's within one of the attachments. It's just a fairly important one because they're recommended conditions within the subdivision assessment. And the L is a completely new recommendation, which is that the General Manager be authorised to make typographical and formatting changes to the report and attachments that retain consistency with the above recommendations. And that's purely because, as I'm sure you're all aware of through your weekend, there's a lot of documentation that we need to pass back onto the TPC. Given how big it is, I think there's a chance that we might uncover another typo or a missed space or something like that, which, yes, just give the General Manager the authority to make those minor typo changes.
Thank you very much. All right, so do I have a councillor to move the motion? That's Councillor Doyle. A seconder, please. Councillor Prince. And Councillor Doyle, any opening remarks?
Oh, well, the very first one I have is that this is one of the most comprehensive lot of reading that we've had, and it was Michael.
Yes.
Yep. Michael Bartlett. Yep. He sort of was here the other day to be able to talk us through that. And so I think he's done a tremendous job and covered everything that we could think of. So we passed on our thanks the other day, but through you, Luke, can you do that again for us, please?
Certainly will.
That is one of a hell of a good report.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor O'May. Over to the
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've considered this proposal and chewed on it for quite a while. It pains me, as I know this area well, and representing a farming fraternity, that a portion of ex-dairy farm is earmarked for this sort of development. But at the end of the day, it's the closest thing to Cigna that there is, as far as common sense goes, and minimising cost to council, and also closeness for people to amenities. It's the next cab off the rank. So common sense says it's a great proposal. And I also like to congratulate our director in doing a great job. And that's about all I've got to say on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson is next. Thank you.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Yes, I met with the developers representative fairly early on in the process for this one, and they were suggesting as their subdivision contribution to build a walking track into Cigna. I think this is a very good idea with the extra density that the subdivision is going to create. I guess the question is, back to the director, is it possible that I understand that we can't, that the land tenure makes it difficult for the developer to do it, but is this something that we can actually put the developer's financial contribution toward, so that we can forward that as a project?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, it's certainly potentially possible. Yes, I mean, obviously that'll be a future decision, but yeah, I think as you alluded to, they certainly were interested in that initially. It became quite difficult because it's not their land, it's Crown land. So we couldn't condition that, but certainly the public open space that they've provided is quite a nice block looks out onto the waterfront. But it won't be the full amount, so there'll be a calculation that'll be done to work out what the cash in lieu component of which then goes into a public open space contribution account, which has to be set aside specifically for the purposes of developing, improving or acquiring public open space. So it certainly is open to the potential to use it for those sorts of projects, yes.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the response. Other questions? Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to the Director of Environmental, Luke, could you, just following on from Councillor Gibson, the idea of, that contribution, because we have Burton's Reserve so close in many ways, there is already a substantial recreational area there, and it seems like it could enhance that development by allowing a walkway through to Burton's Reserve. And I'm wondering if that's a way of looking at that cash contribution, because we already have Burton's Reserve as an area already in situ. So is that possible to consider it in that way in light of Burton's Reserve?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and you may. Certainly, Councillor Campbell, I think that you share a similar view, I think, to the planners that have worked on this. We didn't really want to require a large area of parkland within the development itself, given how close it is to the really large Burton's Reserve. It seems much more practical to consolidate those funds, have a small area of public open space that then accesses onto the esplanade like they've provided, and then potentially put that contribution towards some other projects, such as potentially a walking track link towards it. I think from a planning principle perspective, I'd agree with your view that utilising the nearby Burton Reserve makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I just know that when Councillor Wilson and myself and Councillor Gibson met with the developers and the surveyors, it was certainly something that they were very happy to see added to their development to allow a walkway to Burton. So it would be great if we could, accommodate something like that. Thanks very much, Director.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Councillor Wilson.
Look, this development was looked at through council probably 10 years ago, so it's been a long time in the making, but a good one, and it's going to be good for our valley. It really is. It's going to attract, I believe, a lot more people out of Hobart to want to come into our valley and live, not just for the locals that are here that want to buy. 60 odd lots is a lot of lots, so it's going to create a lot of revenue. It's going to create a lot of work, and that's the type of thing that we want in the valley. And you wouldn't get a better spot, even though I agree with Councillor O'May, it's farming land, but basically it is a good lot and will be good for this valley.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gibson, you have a comment or question?
The question with regard to how comprehensive this report is, and it's a question of relation to the cost to the developer, I guess, of such a big report. I wonder whether or not, in terms of economic development and helping people to do this sort of work, whether we don't go too far with some of the reports asked for. And I'm wondering, whether there's whether the director has any comment on that.
Actually, you would like to answer that? It's just not directly involved with this particular development. It's a matter that we could discuss at another time, perhaps in a workshop, that's all. But if you want to respond briefly.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just clarify that we do only request the information that's required. So it's the work that's required to assess it against the planning scheme and the Land Use Planning Approvals Act, and then that also has to be provided to the Tasmanian Planning Commission. So we're always mindful of all steps of the process, what's going to be required to help the project get through.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And sorry, the acting director would also. Sorry, acting general manager would also comment.
Further to the director's comments, particularly in relation to this one, because it deals with something which is a change to the Southern Tasmania Regional Land Use Strategy, that further strategic work had to be done. So it's certainly required in this basis, and we wouldn't be able to progress it forward without that.
Well, thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor O'May.
Could I make a comment in regards to Councillor Gibson's comment?
Was this the...
In regards to...
You can ask a question.
Oh, yeah, okay. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Councillor Gibson, my question is, wouldn't we be better off, as there's already a Crown Reserve which has access to Barton's Reserve, wouldn't we be better off supporting the developer in this proposal to utilise as much of his land as possible to try and get as much on this block as he possibly can, as there is going to be access to the reserve on the Crown Reserve anyway. I can understand your comments, and I totally agree with you. If there wasn't another alternative, then there should be a designated opportunity able to do so. But in this case, I would have thought that that it's blatantly obvious to me that the nicest route to the reserve will be beside the ocean, and we should be trying to optimise this plan as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah, just to clarify that that was exactly what the proposal was. The walking track was to go along the esplanade, along the road there, just to get people off the road. That's all. It was no change to the subdivision per se.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that confirmation. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Look, I'm in general agreement with most of the comments that have been made here. It's in a prime location, as was pointed out. Its connection to utilities and access to services is all there. The fact that the 61 blocks back onto existing general residential land, so it's consistent with the other purposes in that zone, around that zone. And the reference to the Southern Regional Land Use Strategy being out of date is completely accurate. It's something that the Southern Tasmanian Council Authority has been advocating for with the state government for a number of years now. And we do have a demand for land supply, as mentioned here, in Cigna. And I agree with Councillor Wilson that I think it'd be very attractive for people that are in Hobart wanting to move to a beautiful place like Cigna, and I can see that it'd be quite a quality development in its particular location with its vistas. So I think it's very positive. Councillor Doyle, you move. Do you have any closing comments?
No, ma'am.
No? All right, lovely. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. So the recommendation for this one here. Yeah, find it. Oh, thank you. So just to advise that we're now, as a council, no longer acting as a planning authority, as at the time. 7:28. 7:28. Thank you very much, Sandy. The report that we have in front of us is the Climate Change Strategy Part A Mitigation Plan, agenda number 17.021/20. And just to advise councillors that you will have in front of you an amended recommendation, which I might just ask the Director of Environment Planning to actually talk to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At the previous council workshop, there were a couple of concerns raised around whether or not the wording of some of the actions, or Action 265 in particular, could be misinterpreted or misused into the future. I think there was it was put forward that there was a lot of trust in the staff who will put it together, but you can't be sure of who's going to use the strategy at some point in the future. And we talked about the intent of that action, and as such, we've reworded it slightly just to make sure that the intent is very clear. So it now reads to encourage and support the retention of native forests and for sustainable agricultural practices. And then we've also added in there in italics that case studies, examples and education resources can help to encourage and support positive actions and practices. So hopefully that clarifies the intent of it further and allays concerns around it being misrepresented in the future.
And that was the only amendment to the original one. Beautiful. Thank you very much. So, do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yep, Councillor Gibson, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Prince.
Yep. Before we
Councillor Gibson,
second
yes.
it, I just wanted to suggest a very minor amendment to the motion, if possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's suggested that the strategy will have a 5-year review. I think because things are moving so fast in this area, it would be good to make that an annual review. So if we could just add one point at the bottom of there to include that being annual review, that would be good.
So that the climate change strategy Part A mitigation plan be reviewed annually. Yes?
Yeah, I think it's important.
All right, I'll just go back to the seconder to see whether they are happy with that change. Councillor Prince, are you happy with that amendment?
So originally it was 5 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, for every 5 years it would be looked at.
Just before, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
You meant just to the acting general manager, would doing it annually create some sort of additional workload on staff that hasn't been factored for?
I would answer yes to that. Perhaps the better way of doing it is that if you do have your standard 5-year review period, we do give annual reports in relation to how we're progressing with strategies. So as part of those annual reports, any changes and things which have occurred during that time can be raised during that period. So that would be the better opportunity rather than an annual review.
That probably, to me, sounds more agreeable because it still allows us the opportunity to look into it, but it doesn't lock in to that annual review that sort of delays work in progress because we're constantly reviewing something. I think even if you'd be happy, Councillor Gibson, maybe a 2-year or 3-year review might be preferable to an annual.
Biannual might be fine. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Look, I think a lot of the, there may not be much to review, but there may be quite a lot, and that's because it's a fast-moving area. So, I mean, that's the reason.
So what I'm hearing is the mover is now saying biannual. Biennial review of the document, and Councillor Prince is actually seconding that particular. We just need to sort out whether there is a seconder for the motion.
And the director does have a comment.
Yes, and sorry.
I'd just point out that on page 23 of the strategy, so, and I agree with, I guess, the broader point that Councillor Gibson's making, because we acknowledge it here ourselves. So we say it's intended that the mitigation plan be formally reviewed every 5 years. However, changes between formal reviews may be required due to rapidly changing technology, information and opportunities. So we do acknowledge that same potential issue, Councillor Gibson, and would be open to reviewing earlier if and when the need arises. But I would just point out that a formal review is a fairly extensive process. I think an annual formal review of the strategy will leave us in a almost endless cycle of having someone tied up with constantly working on one strategy. The idea of doing an annual report, like we do with the weed strategy, like we do with the NRM strategy, certainly comfortable with that, where we present the actions that have been taken during the year and any issues that have been uncovered. And through that annual report process, we may identify the need to do a review or an update. I think that would be a good, appropriate way to do it.
I know other councillors are eager to ask questions or make comments. However, I am conscious that we have an amended motion on the floor, and that there is a seconder that is deciding whether they will support the amended motion or they will not.
Yeah, but I think having heard the director's explanation there probably isn't a need to change it from 5 years.
All right. So, okay. So there's now not a seconder for that particular amended motion. So just going to verify with my governance person here. Can we call for another seconder for the amended motion? Yes, thank you. Do we have another seconder for the amended motion that's on the table right now? Okay, all right, so that fails, if that's the word, it falls. So we go back to the original motion that is on the table. Do I have someone to move the original motion? Councillor Gibson, are you moving the original motion?
Yes.
You are, as is. The original motion as is. Okay, all right. So can I have a seconder for the original motion? Okay, Councillor Prince. Okay, all right. Councillor Gibson, you have an opening comment, and then we'll go to the floor for some very eager discussion, I can tell. So, Councillor Gibson, you have the floor for opening comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sorry. Where do I start? I mean, I think we all really love the lifestyle that we have in this beautiful valley. Carbon in the atmosphere is a pollution that we can't see, unlike plastic in the ocean, and that makes it really difficult to understand. But it is really threatening any chance of our children having the same sort of lifestyle that we've been lucky enough to have. So we have to rely on scientists to measure this pollution, and it's been calculated at 40 billion tonnes per annum, which is considerable by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, we're seeing lots of signs of the problem. Unprecedented bushfires here, the mainland, California. These are the sort of warning where we need to take heed of. The droughts and storms and floods, and these are all going to cause a huge refugee crisis in the years to come. So the world is pretty much speeding towards a brick wall, and we've got a choice. We can either plough on with same consequences, or we can change our foot from the accelerator and start to put the brakes on. And this has to be a team effort on a global scale. We don't have to wait for anybody. All we've got to do is identify where, every group, every person, every business can look at where the maximum carbon pollution is from their activities and address it and try to bring it back. So I think that coronavirus has shown us how well we can work together, and there's nothing more satisfying than working together. And so I'm really excited that the Huon Valley now has a strategy, and we can start doing our part to turn things around in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. All right, I'll now open discussion to the floor, and I'll start with Deputy Mayor Doyle, and then I'll work my way around the room. Thank you.
Okay, through you, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to move a procedural motion. And this is because I need to clarify and seek some more clarification. So my motion is that the matter be deferred for the purpose of holding a further councillor workshop on the draft strategy.
You need a second,
yes.
man.
Seconder?
I was second,
yes. Councillor O'May.
Do I get to comment or?
No. So we just go to vote then, don't we, straight away? So we go straight to vote in this circumstance. All those in favour of the procedural motion, raise your hand. That's, I'm going to call everybody out. So Councillor Doyle, Councillor Newell, Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'May, Councillor Lovell and Councillor Prince. And those against the motion, the procedural motion is Councillor Gibson, Councillor Campbell and Mayor Enders. And the procedural motion is carried. Thank you. Right. So we're going to the next agenda item. Commission of Transport response to speed limit reduction on Brayside Road in Franklin. Agenda number 18.006. Oh.
You're right.
Okay. Very eager. Speed limit reduction on Brayside Road in Franklin. Agenda number 18.006 /20. And we don't need to change to this one, do we? No, good. Good, thank you very much. So do we have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Newell. And seconder, Councillor Prince. Yes, you did have your hand up first. Seconder. Councillor Newell, any opening remarks, please?
Yeah, look, I've travelled that road virtually all my life, delivering fuel, and my daughter's now got a block at the top of Rezone. Really good decision to drop the speed limit down to 50 kilometres an hour. I'd say that anyone that it's dropped from 60 to 50, hasn't it?
We asked 50, but the state government have come back and said they won't consider 50, they'll only consider 60. So
okay, well,
yeah, that's
dropped to 60 is good. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can do much over 50 anyway, to be truthful, you know, but hey, that's a start. So good thing.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of houses right on the road there, so it's a really good safety thing.
Yeah, it's been a growth, hasn't it, up that road as well? A bit like Stealth House. Yeah. Thank you for the opening comment. I'll now open the floor for discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, the Commissioner obviously agreed, or hasn't agreed, but would consider a 60 kilometre on that road, so nothing's been agreed upon at this stage, as I understand it. But 60 to me is a fair thing. That's a 40% reduction in what has been there in the past. And if you look at the dropping to the 60 on the 80, it's a 25% reduction in the speed limit up there. And I don't think you can ask for much more really in that area. I think basically what we should probably be looking at into the future is whether we can actually do something budget-wise on improving some sections of it. But that's something that obviously we've got to discuss in budgets. But I totally agree with the 60 kilometre speed limit. I think it's a good result, quite honestly, for Brayside Road.
Thank you. I have Councillor Gibson, and then I'll come back to, I think it was Councillor Lovell, and then Councillor Doyle, and Councillor Campbell. So Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. I was wondering whether the community of Brayside Road have been told about the council's plan to put advisory signs on all of the corners, 25 km/h signs on most of those corners, because I think they're going to really make a more difference than the 10 kilometre difference of between 50 and 60.
Thank you. I'll go over to the Director of Infrastructure, Len Bester, for that question.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Gibson. The community of Brayside Road were following the July council meeting very closely, and the report that was presented to council on that day to recommend that we write to the Commissioner to reduce the speed limit to 50 kilometres an hour. Within that report, there was a description of the works that were going to be undertaken regardless of the outcome of the speed limit reduction. and that's advisory signage on the tight 900 metre tight curvature section of Brayside Road. The inclusion of a central white line, additional guideposts, and that was actually described in that report of July. So I would say that the community were aware of what council's intention were, and in fact the instigators of the initial investigation, who proclaimed that they were representing the community, I had close contact with them to advise them of that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now go to Councillor Lovell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, I know that some of the residents did want the 50k speed limit, and I think 60 is good compromise. At least they didn't come back and say not at all. And like Len has said about the upgrades that council had already committed to, can I just ask through you, Mayor, to the director about the traffic counter study that was done? What was the info that you got given from that?
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lovell. Council periodically place traffic counters on our roads. On Brayside Road, that has been subject to 3 traffic surveys since 2004. The one in 2004 was positioned in the month of April, and that recorded an average of 299 vehicle movements per day on average. So that's in and out of Brayside Road is counted as 2 movements. In July 2019, the traffic counter counted 55 movements in and out of Brayside Road. The counter in March 2020 counted 51 movements per day. So the data that we're receiving from our traffic surveys are not aligning with the extra road use or the busyness of the road. I can just report on the data, but some of the residents from Brayside Road are claiming that there is an increase, but the data's not showing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We now go to Councillor Doyle. Question or comment?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Like everyone here, I suppose we've had contact with people up that road, and I've been communicating, and the 60Ks they're going to be happy with the 60Ks, and with the things that has been promised to them. The one thing I'd like to say is that we have so many small, tight country roads. We are in the country, so it is hard, and I understand that, but we've got so many of them that I think we just have to learn to drive on them. And speed, I think you can put a speed sign up. Doesn't necessarily mean people are going to follow it. It just gives the police something to be able to police them on. So thank you, Director, for your work on this one.
Thank you. We now go to Councillor Campbell.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to the Director. Yes, thank you, Len, for what you've been doing on this for the Brayside residents. I know they're very happy with the fact that, you've been working with them. One thing I was going to ask, are they aware that you will be requesting the DSG to go ahead with considering the 60k an hour up Brayside?
Yes, Director.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I have made contact with one of the main instigators of this investigation and advised him of the letter that we have received from the Commissioner of Transport rejecting the 50 kilometres an hour, but advising that they may consider a 60 kilometres an hour if it was this council's wish. So the report you have in front of you this evening is to actually resolve that. My officers actually write to the Commissioner of Transport requesting for 60 kilometres an hour. We are waiting for that advice back from the Commissioner after this meeting tonight. And then once we get that information back on the approved speed, posted speed limit on Brayside Road, then we'll be undertaking the additional advisory signage so that we're not up there doubling up.
In relation to the monies that you require, 6 to 7,000, you mentioned that was coming out of the maintenance budget. Is that right?
That's correct, Councillor Campbell. It can't come out of anything else. It can't be classed as capital works, as an asset. So that will have to come from savings or the distribution of maintenance or operational monies through other departments. So it's not money that's just sitting there for this project. We have money to replace the occasional damaged sign or faded sign, but there's no specific allocation for these works. So we'll be looking to find savings in other areas or reallocating monies from somewhere else.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I just think you've done a great job. I think the residents would be very happy just to see, you know, some action up there. I think will give them peace of mind, and I know they're grateful, and I'm very grateful because I've had a lot to do with conversations, and I think the compromise is really, really positive. So thank you again, Len.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions or comments from the floor? I think it's been pretty well covered by all of the councillors and the responses. And I agree with Councillor Neil, those bends warrant you only to do 30 or 40 Ks anyway around them. So hopefully, most of the residents will be satisfied with that reduction in speed and the safety improvements that you have discussed tonight, Director Len Bester. And as you pointed out, Councillor Doyle, we have so many roads in the Huen Valley that I think we just need to sometimes just try and keep an eye on how much development is occurring up some of our roads, because the situation changes before we even realise it, and our community realise it before we actually do sometimes when there's creeping development that occurs. All right, so Councillor Neil, do you have any closing comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And yeah, that's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Thank you. So it's that time of the evening where our council meeting goes into a closed session. We thank everybody for taking the time to watch this evening's council meeting, and look forward to your attendance next month. And so while that's finalising,